Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast with your host, Matt the Family Guy, Kent the Cat Guy, and me, Greg the Single Guy. We are recording episodes from around the globe to tell you about the best kept secret in education. That's right, it's teaching overseas. We're glad to have you join us.
Hey, welcome to the International Teacher Podcast. I am Kent the Cat Guy, and with me tonight is Greg the Single Guy, and our special guest is Matthew Courtney. We could call him the Stat Guy. Welcome, Matthew and Greg.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me today.
Great. Thank you for joining us.
Good to see you. Hey, Matthew, where are you coming in from?
I'm
Matthew?
coming in.
Where are we listening
I'm
to
coming
you
in from Frankfort, Kentucky, in the United States.
Is that where you're from?
Yeah.
Wow. And so tell us a little bit about...
All right, well,
thanks
listen.
for coming tonight. We'll see you guys next week on the International Teacher Podcast.
Go ahead, Ken.
So tell us a little bit about growing up in Kentucky. Now, is it Appalachia? I'm not that familiar with Kentucky. Tell our listeners just a little bit about your background.
Sure, yeah. Kentucky's a beautiful state. I've lived here all my life. We say we're at sort of the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. So the eastern part of our state is some beautiful mountain territory. The western part of our state is more flat, a lot of farmland. We're known for horses and bourbon here in Kentucky. So always down for a good time and a horse race.
Now, is that together with horses and bourbon at the same time? Or are those separate activities?
Absolutely. The two industries are very well combined. They go great together.
And what did you do? So you went to high school in Kentucky. What did you do after high school then?
Yeah, so after high school, I went to university to do an undergraduate degree. My plan originally was to become a musicologist. I have an undergraduate degree in music and was going to go to grad school and study music and write papers. But along the way, I student taught and got a teaching license, and I fell in love with the education field. And literally on the phone with my advisor one day at 4:30 after school, my whole career trajectory changed and I never looked back. So I've been a music teacher. I've worked in the nonprofit sector. I've worked in state government, in schools, of course, as well. And I'm an educator through and through.
Wow. So you grew up playing instrument. What is your main instrument?
These days, mostly piano, but through school, I played trumpet and French horn all the way through my undergraduate degrees in French horn.
Oh, that's amazing. I had a music teacher in college. Mad Dog Cappy was a French horn player. I think he probably lived up to his nickname a little bit. Wow. And so then did you teach?
Did you say porn? French porn? Did you say French porn? I thought he said French porn, Matthew. This is a family show, Kent.
Well, Mad Dog Cappy might have had a side gig.
Santa Claus.
So, Matthew, did you teach? What level? Were you a high school band director?
No, I taught elementary, general music and choir.
Oh, bless you. Oh, my gosh. We had a music guy on a couple weeks ago. Just let me ask you this real fast. Did they learn the recorder in fourth grade in Kentucky?
Oh, yes. I love recorder. That's a 4-month unit. I loved it. My colleagues,
Really,
not so much.
Let me tell
parents
you-
maybe got some emails too. I'm not sure. Go ahead, Greg.
You know, Matthew, I had to, we do a lot of subbing at our school, and for the last couple of months, I've been dragged out of my specialty of tech, and I've had to go across the gamut from pre-K through 4, and I had the most horrible experience teaching music. I bless you guys, all of you women and men that teach elementary music, bless you.
Yeah.
I mean, until you have sat in a music room and tried to teach music for 40 minutes to kindergartners, I don't think you've actually lived through a crisis before. I mean, I can play 2 guitar chords. I'm really good at recorder, but little kids don't care about recorders. I gave them the whatchamacallit sticks. What are those long plastic sticks that you wham them on the floor?
They're called boom whackers.
Okay, I call them whatchamacallits, boomers, whackers, whatchamacallits, and the kids are like, Mister, you don't even know the name. And I'm like, no, I don't. Go get the thing. Go get the stick thing. Get the plastic thing. And it went on like that for 40 minutes. And I tell you, I'm entertaining, but not to kindergartners. I mean, I can entertain quite a few people, right,
Oh,
Kent?
you're entertaining us
But
right
these
now.
kids, it was a horrible disaster.
Well,
Horrible disaster.
we love music teachers on the International Teacher Podcast, so thank you for being you. Now, connect the dots for me. You're teaching elementary music, but we really want to talk a little bit about you're a published author in education statistics. Connect those dots for us, how you go from elementary classroom music teacher to being the stat guy.
Yeah, so for me, it's really a journey of school improvement and thinking about how do we do school better? How do we work smarter, not harder? It's a little bit of a cliche, but I think it's something you can actually achieve in a school system. And as I was going through and earning my graduate degrees, I taught while I was in graduate school. And I remember just feeling really overwhelmed, sitting and kind of bluffing my way through professional learning community meetings and faculty meetings as we were looking at data. And I remember just kind of going, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We could act on that, and really not having any idea what I was talking about. And so in grad school, I thought, I need to really learn this. I need to dig deep and really quit bluffing my way through all of these meetings. And so that's when I really started to understand the role that data and also research can play in driving school improvement at the classroom level, at the building system level, all the way up to the state level, really thinking about how can we use our data to learn about our kids in an efficient way, and then take action to improve teaching and learning conditions based on that data.
So your journey in statistics started in graduate school, is that right?
It did. That's
And
right.
how much math? Did you have to go outside of the education department to develop math skills, or within the education department? How did that work out?
Yeah, so I did have some of the statistics class that probably most educators with a graduate degree have taken, things like educational stats and measurements and some basic stats classes. But really, I learned a lot of it online and by reading books and watching YouTube videos because, you learn sort of in the context of class, the basic theory, but then it's the like, how do I actually do the thing? And when do I actually want to use this test or that test or calculate the mean versus the median? And that was always kind of lost on me. And so I did a lot of work on sort of looking at like industry. How does Google use data? How does Amazon use data? They have lots of really cool free online courses and videos you can take and watch. And that really changed my perspective on data a lot.
Wow.
All
Yeah,
right, I got a
jump in
question
there,
for
Greg.
you. So you're an author, and you've got 2 books out, as far as I know, that are published. I noticed that your most recent book, Adventures in Action Research, is really about the teaching level. I think instead of at the leadership level. I know that you talk about helping out at all different levels, but the teachers that need to learn how to use data, it sounds like it's geared toward the teachers. Is it geared toward teachers?
Yeah, both of my books, I would say the primary audience is practicing classroom teachers, although there certainly are things and takeaways that building level and system level administrators can use as well. I believe that when we can help teachers to learn to harness data and analysis and evaluation techniques, when they can learn to use those action research skills, that they can solve their own problems in real time, they can make better instructional decisions. And I believe that an evidence-informed educator is an empowered educator. The bulk of my work really exists around helping classroom teachers figure out, I collect data all day, every day as a classroom teacher. You're flooded with data, millions of data points that you don't even do anything with most of the time. And thinking about how can we take that data systemically? Let's make data collection better and easier. Let's actually use that to inform instruction and take that old cliche, work smarter, not harder, and actually do it.
As a homeroom teacher, I was definitely driven by data. And I loved the idea that I could go up in front of my team and say, listen, we have in our grade level, we have this percentage of our students are reading at this level, or this percentage is at this level with math, and we need to improve that. Of course, we're talking about hard data, but there's also a lot of actual research data that you do in your classroom and collecting it. And it sounds like you give some good ideas of starting with a question and the process. Is that true? Touch on that a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's spot on. I think that we spend too much time worried about our standardized testing data. I think standardized testing data plays a role. I'm not saying we shouldn't be looking at that and using that, but we have so much teacher created and collected data that we're just really not tapping into at all. And so both of my books, Adventures in Action Research and Exploratory Data Analysis in the Classroom, are process-oriented books. So they actually tell you step by step, here's what you do. You collect this data, and then you're going to type this into your spreadsheet and hit enter. You're going to get this number. Here's what that number means. Here's how you can use that. So both of my books are very process oriented. Adventures in Action Research is actually set up kind of like a choose your own adventure book. So you start with the introduction, and then you get some choices, and you turn to whatever page. You do what's on that page, and you get some choices. You turn to the next page. So it's a book that you can kind of recycle and use over and over. Exploratory Data Analysis in the Classroom, also, that one has vignettes that runs throughout. So I find that a lot of times teachers have a hard time thinking about this other sources of data because we're so standardized testing driven that they forget that this other data is out there. So I use vignettes to really say, here's how a teacher used this data in a different way to inform some decisions. The cool thing about that book is you can download teacher spreadsheets that are aligned to those vignettes and actually follow along. So if the vignette says that a teacher downloaded this and ran X, Y, and Z statistical test, you can download that same data, run those tests, and make sure you're doing it right and check your own work along the way.
So, Matthew, your books are both process oriented and give vignettes, respectively. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came up with those scenarios?
Yeah, all of those vignettes and examples are born from my work with schools. I do that as a consultant now, but I've also done that in sort of very formal roles, going in and doing data and research coaching. So everything that's in those books comes from the real world. They come from real classrooms. Of course, they've been anonymized and cleaned up a little bit to generalize to a broader audience. But they're all real things that we see from schools. And I use these books when I go out. All these books actually started as training materials and things I would take with me when I would go into schools. And then I said, there's probably some more work we can do here to help more teachers if I can polish it up and put it in a book.
You mentioned earlier that at teacher trainings, when statistics comes up and data comes up, teachers tend to their eyes tend to roll to the back of their heads. Why do you suppose that? How did we get to that point with teachers that data became sort of this thing that was just too big to even think about sometimes?
That's a great question and a real concern that I have about how we deal with data as a profession. I think there's really three causes to that. I think the first is that teachers have been forced to endure a lot of really bad PD and a lot of bad professional learning. And so anytime,
Yes.
yeah, you second that one, I get it. Me too. And anytime we bring in an outside consultant, it takes a little time to build that trust and to open the floor for that consultant to do meaningful work. One of my personal rules as a consultant is I do not do after school PD. If it's important enough for your staff to learn it, it's important enough for you to provide paid, protected time for them to learn that skill. So that's a hard and fast rule that I will not violate. I also think most of us have had poor and out of context training in our schooling, in our graduate classes or even undergraduate statistics classes. I know my first statistics classes were completely out of context. I was taught statistics originally using data from the medical field and from sort of social services. And certainly the skills apply, but the content and the context doesn't. And I think context really matters when we're trying to learn a cognitively heavy skill like data analysis. I think the final thing that's really kind of in the way and creating that sort of eye roll is just the way that we have used data as a field. Data has been used to punish teachers, to punish schools, to punish kids. We spend a lot of time placing blame and looking for fault when really we need to say with a continuous improvement mindset, this is just what the data is telling us. This is information. It is morally neutral. And we need to take that information and act upon it through a continuous improvement mindset, how do we make our school always better? One of the things I love to say is that continuous improvement is how we make good schools great and great schools even better. It's not something that just exists for sort of like federally identified low performing schools. This is something that we can all embrace and learn and grow from. And that's just a mind shift change. It's going to take time.
A big part of our listenership, Matthew, is overseas. When a lot of our teachers are just like teachers in the States. We have our 20 kids here, we have our classroom, we have our meetings, and that's why I looked forward to having you on this show. Our teachers are a lot like yours, and we don't always have access to the resources that we need, like having PD. We don't necessarily get a chance to bring in speakers. The schools won't necessarily pay for even webinars. A lot of teachers are on their own.
Yeah.
And some of the bigger schools, the better, more funded schools might be able to do that kind of thing. But as a homeroom teacher, what I love hearing you say is that this is for me as a homeroom teacher. Like Kent is a homeroom teacher right now, and he can reach out and he can read your books. He can listen to some of your webinars. He can go onto your website and find your blog. He can learn from you on how to really put it in place to get more positive action based on the student collection of information that he has in his own classroom. And I love that. It's really speaking to me as a former homeroom teacher also. I wanted to collect data on my kids. You know, I don't know if Kent has done this before, but even if it's who likes who in the class. I did that one year with kids. I said, I have 17 kids in the class, and I wanted to know where the friendships lie. I interviewed each kid and said, who's your favorite friend here, and who do you consider not a friend in the classroom? And I made this little matrix and drew it all out. That was data. And what did I do with that? And that was thinking, how can I make this actionable? And how do I make that, something as simple as that is meaningful because it's going to improve my classroom. So that's what really drew me to everything that you offer, from big data to smaller data to the real classroom data. And it's all drawn to you because you started out in the classroom also. You're a music teacher. You were in elementary, and that speaks volumes to us. It's not just a data math guy telling us how to do it. And that's what I wanted to reach out and just congratulate you on your journey and what you've produced so far. And that's really why we have you on this show. So I wanted to make sure that was clear, that we do have you on this show for a good reason. We're not talking necessarily international education focus. It's more of how can international educators use this kind of idea and learn from you. And that's what I like. Right, Kent?
I was just trying to think where I put you on the matrix of friendship.
You were dreaming.
Are you a good friend? Are you kind of a neutral friend? I'm trying to figure out that matrix where I'm putting you.
Matthew, he's lying because all Kent wants to do is he wants to ask his next data-driven question. That's what it is. He drones me out.
You're not supposed to drone people out while you're thinking about your question. You're supposed to listen and respond. I'm working on that, Matthew. I'm working on
communication.
that.
Yeah. Well, let me respond to that first before you go on. So I love the example that you gave around, do my kids like each other? And you made this friendship matrix. And so that's a research methodology. It's called social network analysis. And that's a technique that there's a lot of research around, a lot of strategies that you can use. And so as a classroom level educator, you did that, sounds like to me, kind of on a lark, and it had some benefit to you. But what if you could take that and combine that with all this external knowledge that we know about social network analysis? My job is to translate that for you as a classroom teacher and help you think beyond your network that you created. I'm sure that was very helpful to you, but here's some other things. You can go even deeper with that. And also, I like that teachers can use these techniques to solve their own problems. I was working with a teacher recently she's a kindergarten teacher, and she had a student who was not fully potty trained. And that causes a lot of classroom management challenges for her and a lot of disruption. And she kind of went through all the usual things that a teacher does when that happens. It's not unusual for a kindergarten teacher to have kids who are still on the tail end of potty training for lots of reasons. She worked closely with the family. There was nothing physically wrong with the child. There was nothing medically wrong with the child. There was a behavior concern here, and the parents were struggling too. And so this teacher came to me. We dug into the research on potty training for slightly older kids. She created an intervention in her classroom and helped that family potty train their child. She changed her classroom. She solved an immediate problem that she had with her own data and research. No one helped her do that. The principal didn't help her do that. There was no resources. She spent no money, but she solved a pressing problem, changed her classroom, and frankly, changed the life of that child.
Well, I don't think everybody can be that successful, right? Because we have these problems, and it sounds like your book walks through some processes that will help us sort of get that mindset like, I can solve my own problem, and I don't have to be the success story right away because I'm going to learn from my failure of it. But I need a process to maybe solve it somewhere along the line. So I have to say this, Kent. Can I share my story? He brought it up. Matthew brought it up. Can I share my story, Kent?
I would love to hear your story.
Oh, my God. Matthew, I'm going to take you back to your teaching days.
Okay, let's go.
I was sitting in class, and I had preschoolers in front of me. They all call me Mr. Chicken, and that's a long story, but they're doing Duplo Legos, which just building skills, right? And they're working together in little teams. They're on the little colored carpet squares in front of me, and I'm sitting in a little easy chair overseeing everybody. And I just sort of finished up a conversation with the little assistant that came in, and this little girl, she's got this beautiful little dress on, and she looks at me, and she's like this adorable little, the little girl that you wouldn't expect anything from. And she looks at me, and she gets right in my face, and she goes, "Guess what, Mr. Chicken? I fart when I laugh." And I'm like, oh my God. I started belly laughing, and I almost fell out of my chair. And when I started laughing, this little girl just lets out this huge ripping fart because she started laughing. And then she looks at this other boy, and she goes, "Hey, Johnny, I just tooted." And I'm like, oh my God. I can't tell you how enjoyable it is to teach, but you brought it up, man. You brought up the whole potty training thing. What do you do when a little girl says she farts a lot? I'm like, oh,
that's a great story. I think every teacher's been there.
It brings you back, and it brings you down to real teaching level because we're teachers. We'll take a moment's break now to remind you how to reach out to us. Of course, you can address any negative comments to Kent, the cat guy. We do love to hear from you. If you're out on Facebook, we don't do that, but our handle on both Instagram and Twitter are at ITPExpats with an S, ITPEXPATS. As a handle, if you want to, you can send us an old email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com, or you can visit us at our new website at www.itpexpat.com. www.itpexpat.com. Well, back to the show.
Okay, I'm going to jump in. So, Matthew, let's say you and I have had a PD. You've come, you visited, I teach fourth grade homeroom. I would describe myself as a data skeptic. And I'll tell you why I feel that way sometimes. We do a screening test that we buy from a company. We do a map test that we buy from a company. And, you research it, you dig into the statistics that they give back to you. And sometimes it feels like a black box. Sometimes it feels like this information enters into some sort of zone and it kind of comes back at you. And you kind of have no idea what happens to that data when it's sort of in that black box.
Yeah.
And so let me ask you this. I collect data every day in the classroom I teach, and I do these tests. What do you say to a teacher like me who's slightly skeptical, who's open, who's interested? I like the message that you're bringing. What would your message to me be?
Yeah, so the phrase I like to use is data hesitant teachers who are kind of in this position and they feel like there's some value here, but it doesn't feel valuable right now, right? Like it's potentially valuable. And I think what I would say to you is this: the techniques that I teach are not rocket science. They're basic entry-level data skills. And if you can learn this handful of basic skills, I teach them using spreadsheet software. My books are really carefully constructed to make sure that everything that I teach works across all spreadsheet platforms. So if you're using Excel, if you're using Numbers, if you're using Google Sheets, whatever platform you're using, these techniques work universally. And if you can learn this handful of skills, then you can learn how to mine useful data out of any data set, no matter where it comes from. One of the challenges that I think with the standardized testing platforms is that they all have their own analytic platforms and their own reports. And how many hours have we all spent? Oh, we're changing the test, so everybody has to go to this 4-hour PD to learn how to download or interpret a report from this system. You don't need to do that. With my skills, the way that I teach this, if you can master this handful of spreadsheet skills, all you need to know is how to get a spreadsheet out of that platform. And they'll all do that. Whatever platform you've bought, they'll all export a spreadsheet. And so especially with exploratory data analysis as a sort of conceptual framework, you get that spreadsheet out and you follow this replicable process. I like to say it's like having a conversation with the data. We're looking for anomalies. We're looking for things that aren't what we expected them to be because maybe they're higher or lower, positive, negative, whatever framework we need to think about them. We're looking for these anomalies, and then those anomalies are what we act upon. And I just think it's so much faster. Again, going back to smarter, not harder, right? If I can learn one set of skills and I can apply it to every standardized test that we give, plus everything that I'm already collecting in my own classroom, that is efficient. Far more efficient than the 4-hour training for that PD or for that platform, the 3-hour training for this platform, and then I got my own stuff to do. It's one set of skills that we can use universally across all data sets.
What kind of feedback do you get from teachers once they have your PD, they've read your book? What do they come back and tell you?
Yeah, so most of them come back and they say, I thought that this was going to be a lot harder. We have this notion that data analysis and statistics have to be really hard. And certainly there's sort of a range of rigor in statistical analysis, but the tools that you need as a classroom level teacher to spot an anomaly in data and act upon that in an improvement mindset are really pretty low level. They're things like the average, which teachers calculate all the time as we do grades for the end of the semester and things like that. We look for sometimes even just counts. We can kind of count how many kids did this or that. And that's a very simple, the number's higher or lower. So a lot of times, people come in hesitant because they're scared of the hardness of the data, right? And the past training that they've had. And then they go, oh, these concepts really aren't as hard. I don't really need to be doing all this advanced statistics in order to make a change in my classroom today. Those advanced statistics, they're great. They're great for central office staff. They're great for researchers and universities. But for the random average classroom teacher, they don't need all of that. They need basic skills. They need to spot anomalies and act on anomalies.
Let me ask you a quick question. I don't mean to put you on the spot. How do you feel about middle schools and high schools grades, report card grades being driven by a percentage, just sort of one number? Is that a fair way to give a grade to a student? I don't want you to indict the system or anything, but I teach elementary school and I have to give a number and I write comments, but are percentages an accurate way to give grades, do you think?
I mean, I taught elementary music and I had to give percentage grades. So I understand that frustration. I mean, we could talk for 5 hours about grades. Personally, I like a mastery grading system. I like to say, in this class, you're expected to achieve this goal. And I want to see at the end that you've been able to achieve this goal, demonstrate this skill. I understand sort of historically why we do percentage grades and why people want that. Parents are used to seeing that. That's how we received grades as a kid. That's a hard transition to make. But I think there's enough research now that we should start taking a really hard look at the way that we present grades to kids and families. I think there's a lot of experts in that field who can really take us in some new directions. And as a continuous improvement guy, I'm always looking for, is there a better way to do this? And I think there probably are some better ways out there.
I hope so. Yeah, right. Absolutely. Greg, what do you think?
It really is helpful to hear you say that. It's supportive for those of us that are math phobics. I thought when you see a book that's called Data Driven, or if the word data is in there, I want to run for the hills because it's another PD. Like you mentioned before, it's another PD, another meeting I have to sit through about ENWIA map testing or about some other kind of standardized test. And yet, what I tell parents that it's also a data set that we don't have a whole lot of. We start our map testing at like third grade, and that parents will come in, helicopter parents will come in, and bless their hearts, they care about their kid, but they'll come in at the first map test point of data. They'll take the test the very first time on a computer for the first time, and then they'll come in and say, how can I improve my child? The first thing I say is, you know what? Can we have this conversation in 5th or 6th grade, right? After we have more data, I've had enough statistics to know. And if they don't agree with me, I say, well, would you want to go to, would you want to do X, Y, Z with just one point of data, or do you want to have some kind of a history of data and show growth, right? That was just my first initial thought on your comments, because those questions are very pointed for you, and I think that our listeners are going to learn a lot from this. I certainly have already. I mean, I'm a math phobic myself, but I do believe in data. It improves the classroom.
Well, and I think one of the things too, those kinds of tests that we give throughout the year, we call those diagnostic assessments, right? They're supposed to help us understand kind of where a kid is right now. And so I like to think of those like you're going for your annual physical with your doctor. For your doctor doesn't really care what your blood pressure is, what your blood sugar is, what your temperature is today. They care, how is it compared to what it should be, what we would expect it to be. And then they dig even deeper into that, right? So your doctor finds an anomaly. Well, Matthew, your blood pressure is a little high. Let's talk about that. And then we start to talk about, do I need to amend my diet? Do I need to quit my job? Do I need to do more meditation, more exercise? Do I need medication? There's all these options, right? And so your doctor digs deeply into that anomaly in order to understand it and then to help you improve whatever that anomaly is. So I like to think about that with our diagnostic assessments, and even with the teacher collected in the flow data. Really, we're looking for, this number just doesn't look like I think it should look. Why doesn't it look that way? Is it because the kid's absent a lot? So remediation isn't going to help a kid who's absent a lot, because the problem is they're not there to remediate them. So we got to dig into that anomaly. Is it because the kid has past trauma? And we need to deal with that before they can start learning. Maybe it is remediation. Maybe it is a special education situation, and we need to start looking at, does this kid need extra, more intensive support? But we have to be able to spot those anomalies and dig deeply into them. And that's what I love about exploratory data analysis as a technique, because most of the things you're doing in your spreadsheet software are, in my state, are like 4th or 5th grade level math standards. So we're not doing graduate level math. We're doing elementary school level math on these spreadsheets. The book gives you exactly, click here, type this, click here. It is very painfully specific, because I want you to be able to get those numbers out, to spot those anomalies so that you can act upon them. The other thing I'll say too, to your point a moment ago, none of my books are longer than 150 pages. I have a hard rule. Nothing can be more than 150 pages. Teachers don't have time to read a 500-page tome on data theory. On my bookshelves here, I probably have 20,000 pages of data theory. And I have time to read that because I'm the data guy and I'm the nerd who wants to know all that. But a classroom teacher, when I was a teacher, I couldn't have read all of this. I had to leave the classroom to have time to dig deep and learn all of this. And so I want my books and my materials to be easily digestible, to be able to be read in a weekend, read in a couple of afternoons, spread out over several PLC meetings. They need to be accessible for them to be useful.
I like the fact you brought up, you brought up books, didn't you, Kent? How long is my book, Kent?
Your book? What is it?
Come on, you read
150
it. 150
pages.
Come on, Kent.
I think it's about 75 plus 75.
Matthew, I agree. It has to be a short book. I think mine's called Finding the Right Fit.
www.amazon.com or wherever you buy your finer books.
They joke around with me all the time about this book. It's my first book. It's my first book, Matthew. And
hey, listen, tell us a little bit about education books. Is it possible to make money in education book writing, or is it a labor of love?
For me, I think it's a labor of love. I don't make a lot of money from my books, but I get a lot out of it. And the teachers that I talk to, and one of the things that it says in the introduction to my book is, when you buy this book, you become part of my network. And on my website, there's a whole page on it called the repository, where all my resources go, and those are accessible to folks. And I talk to people all the time who say, hey, I read your book, I read this blog, I use this tool on your website. Can we hop on a quick call? And I'm always happy to do that, because it makes me feel good to know that I've made a teacher's life a little easier.
So your job in education.
Let me plug your website.
Oh, okay, go for it. Yeah.
Kent,
you may do it.
I have to push him out, Matthew. You know, if I don't push him out, I don't get to
cut
talk.
out in post. You won't even know I'm here when we get to the post.
I cut out about
Greg
45
interviews
minutes
Matthew.
of Kent,
That's
and
the
it's
title
just
of it.
It's you and I. It's you and I on the interview. Okay, so let's start with this. I want to plug your website and your resources quite a bit here, just because I am a website kind of guy. I'm a book kind of guy. Listen, I logged into your website, and it is very easy to read. It's very user-friendly. It's black and white for the most part, which I love. You have a blog that's separated by that. You have your books on there. It's so easy to read. I want to change the International Teacher Podcast at itpexpat.com. Had to plug that. I want to change ours to black and white after looking at yours. It looks crisp. It's easy to find the information, and I wanted to give you kudos on that. What you're giving us is a lot of help, and I think teachers overseas, they don't want to put a lot of time into finding what they want. So to go and log into MatthewBCourtney.com and find everything they need from this episode, from you, and to get into your network, I think that is amazing, because we don't come across websites that are that easy to navigate very often. It's professional. So congratulations on that. And I want all of our listeners to go to MatthewBCourtney.com and see what you've got.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I've worked really hard and thinking a lot about accessibility. And I'm a research and data guy. And so really the website design is informed by cognitive load theory. I know that the material I'm presenting holds a heavy cognitive load. And so I need to remove other pieces of cognitive load. That's why the website is so minimalist.
Yep.
So yeah, all of that's very intentional. I really practice what I preach. I could talk to you for another hour about the research that went into the design of the website. Because like I said, practice what I preach. You have visited my website. If you put your email address in a couple of days, you're going to get a survey to give me feedback about the website, because that's how I continuously improve it.
Already done.
Well, great. We'll be watching for that to fill out that survey for me, because that helps me make it better. One thing I do want to plug on the website are my 6 auto analysis tools. So I have 6 tools. They're on the tab called the repository. That's where all my resources live. They're freely accessible tools, and you can upload a spreadsheet and it automatically analyzes them. There's 6 different ones to look at. One does pre-test, post-test. One will disaggregate by student categories. Their skills or they're not skills, they're activities, exercises that teachers do all the time, but you can do them so fast that I actually have GIFs of them that I will share on social media, because that's how quick they are, that I can make a 2-second GIF to upload and analyze. So please go, to all of your listeners, go check out those tools. They're free. I'm committed to keeping those tools free, because I think they'll save you a lot of time.
So let me go through them real quick. There's 6 tools, like you said. One is distribution analysis tool, the distribution comparison tool, intervention analysis tool, data disaggregation tool. See there? That's a lot. That's a big word right there. Disaggregation. Then there's the correlation matrix generator. Take the green or the blue pill. And then outcome forecasting tool, right? These are awesome. I love it. And like I said before, it's not an empty thank you. It really is. It's a great tool to have. This whole website is great. I do have one off the beaten path question, though, and we are video recording right now just for our interview, but we only record the audio. And what our audience doesn't know is that right now, if you go to his website, he's always wearing a bow tie. Is the bow tie part of your shtick? Because you're not wearing one right now, Matthew.
Yeah, no, I'm not wearing a bow tie here in my home office, but when I'm out in the world, I wear that bow tie every day. Everywhere I go, I've got a huge collection of them. Holidays are right around the corner, and I hope to get a bunch more. You'll very rarely catch me out in public without a bow tie.
Well, we'll give you an ITP bow tie when we have those
I would
made.
love that.
As soon as we.
I will proudly wear it.
I don't mean to make light of it. It's great. You're a bow tie kind of guy. Kent and I would never be seen in bow ties. We just can't pull it off. You can pull it off, I think.
You want me? I wear a bow tie. That's okay. Matt's the family guy. He's on with the family.
I don't want you to wear a bow tie.
I'll wear a bow tie. I'll wear a tie. I'll wear a head bow tie. Like little first graders walk around.
Matt, the family guy, would definitely pull off a bow tie. He needs to wear one. We need to get him to wear one.
He
That's
could
for
pull
sure.
the look off. Yeah.
Go ahead, Kent.
My question to you is, do you get, do people from outside the United States reach out to you? Have you had interest around the world? Where are some of the places that have kind of reached out and said, hey, can you give us some
Good
advice?
question.
Yeah, I certainly have. I've had some, I get lots of folks from the United Kingdom. I had a doctoral student from Australia once who called me and was trying to use my tools to help do her dissertation analysis. I've got some folks in Latin America who have reached out to me. I speak Spanish pretty well, and so they'll reach out to me and I help work through some data points with them too. So yeah, it's called the World Wide Web for a reason, right? And I love to connect with people wherever they are.
Oh, that's right. Well, Greg, I think we hit about 85 countries here on the International Teacher Podcast. So if you start getting emails and calls from around the world, hopefully maybe they heard you today and sparked an interest in statistics and data. For our listeners, have you got another book in the works coming up at all?
Well, Adventures in Action Research is just now hitting the shelves. And so
fantastic.
Probably need to take a little time to recover from that one. But I am working on a series of asynchronous online courses. I'm hoping to be able to provide those at a low cost with keeping teacher budgets in mind, but really to help you think about, like I think one of us said earlier, that it's hard to access that PD. We're on our own a lot to find those sources. And so taking some of these books, transitioning those into video courses and asynchronous lessons, I think is the next big step.
Where could they find those future courses? Will they come off your website?
They'll all be on my website, MatthewBCourtney.com. Check out the repository.
Fantastic. Great.
Also, you need to go to the blog, and I want to highlight two cool post titles that I saw on there. Once again, it's so easy to navigate and find these. One is Failure, the Way to Continuous Improvement, rang a bell with me. I haven't read it yet, but that blog post sounds like I need to read it tonight. And there's another one called An Evidence-Informed Educator is an Empowered Educator, which rings true with most educators because you want to empower your students and you want to empower yourself through data, which is what this whole episode's all about. So kudos to you. I can't say thank you enough for this kind of information. Kent has all the great questions, but I need to have the highlights here of ITP. And here's one, and you can share this with us if you want. We need to have a police story. Do you have a nice, light, harmless police story?
A police story?
Yes, or a customs story. I'm putting you on the spot here. Yeah.
Maybe a custom story. I was traveling to Canada for a conference that I was speaking at, and I got pulled out of the customs line because I had a box of Pop-Tarts in my luggage. And the Pop-Tarts, I guess, were considered a pastry, and you can't bring foreign pastry across the border. I said, you don't sell Pop-Tarts in Canada? And they're like, you can buy them at the gas station, but you have to leave these ones here.
Oh my God, that is awesome. I knew you'd have one for us. Canadians, you won't let you bring Pop-Tarts overseas. Oh my God, that's great.
I could see that we're running up against the time. I know you have a hard time that you got to finish. Who are some of your personal favorite authors, thinkers, philosophers? You know, you've got a stack of books behind you, and I know our viewers can't see that, and I know you're a reader and you're a thinker. Who are some of your favorites?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, I'm really loving Amanda Ripley and her work on conflict resolution and how we navigate conflict. We're certainly living in a time where education is filled with conflict for sure. I'm also loving Tim Harford's book called The Data Detective. He's a journalist and writes about how you can spot sort of questionable data interpretations in the media and how people sometimes use data to interpret or to solicit certain emotions. And then the last one here that I'll tell you about, I love the book Academia Obscura by Glenn Wright. It's a slightly older book, but it's a humorous book about all the ridiculous things that we do within the research community. And anytime I have a bad day, I get a journal rejection or what have you, I can flip that book open and remind myself that it's really not all that serious.
70% of all teachers love PDs, but only 5% of those actually really love PDs. Is that good data right there?
I don't know. I think Tim Parker might have some questions about that one.
Now, do you remember? Well, listen, we could cut this part out if there's no connection. Do you remember that guy Hans Rosling? He was kind of that Swedish guy, white hair, and he was kind of, he would stack boxes and he would sort of bring statistics to the mainstream. He passed away a couple years ago, but he was a huge influence during my math years.
Yeah, I'll have to look
that part out.
Well, is he from Seattle or
Swedish.
something?
I think he's from Sweden.
What? Randomly, I'm thinking about the scientist from Back to the Future or something. And what does it have to do with stacking boxes? This is the authors.
right.
This is the knowledge that Ken has.
It must have just been my world. As we wind this down, Matthew, you've been fantastic. Our listeners are going to love you. What are some final thoughts you want to share with the audience? And
yeah, let me give you two thoughts that we haven't touched on yet today. And the first thing that I always say to data heads and educators is to work with data that works for you. If you're working with some standardized testing data and it just doesn't resonate with you, set it down and find some data that does resonate with you. And over time, as you build skills and confidence, different sources of data will start to resonate a little better. And then I have a phrase and a saying, you'll see this in the book, you'll see this on my website, even like products on my website. I have a saying, embrace the productive disequilibrium. Embrace that feeling that you get where you just don't feel like you're really settled in the work. Everything feels a little wonky, but you're moving forward. And as long as you're moving forward, that's what matters. Embrace that feeling, push through it. It'll come out stronger on the other side every time.
Greg?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just pushing record.
Okay, so that's the warm-up. Let's go ahead and do the show now. Okay, hit play.
I just want our listeners to go and check out this website and see what Matthew has to offer. I'm so happy that we've had him on our podcast. It's a different flavor podcast episode for us, and I love it. It gives us real information and process.
Yeah. On behalf of...
and don't bring Pop-Tarts to Canada.
Oh, boy. This is Ket, the Cat Guy, saying on behalf of Greg, the single guy, and myself, a big, huge thank you to Matthew Courtney, author and guest today on our podcast. We will see you next time from the podcast that is one standard deviation above the norm. See you next time.
Well done. Standard deviation, Ken, really?
Matthew, you're great.
Is that the 96th percentile?
I think it's the 73rd. I think you got to be 2 standard deviations to get to
Yeah, that's the best